Good morning, everybody. Jonathan Miller from brokenStones here again, recording one of our brokenStones business podcasts. Today, joining me is Hedley from Adcocks Solicitors. Welcome.
Morning. Thanks, Jonathan.
Not a problem. We obviously anyone who's seen these podcasts previously will know that what we try and do. We're a business based in Lichfield. We're very passionate about other businesses based in Lichfield, and we do a huge amount of work in terms of networking and working with respected businesses in the area to really put the message out about them, what they're doing in the community, what they're doing as a business, and really take these podcasts as an opportunity for these businesses and these individuals to talk about themselves. They've all got interesting histories, they've all got backgrounds, and they've all got some great advice to give out to other businesses in the area. So people have normally heard enough about me already. So let's talk to you, Hedley, straight away. Give people who don't know your business a précis of what you guys are all about, and perhaps how you started and have worked within the business.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So we are Adcocks Solicitors. We are based in Lichfield City Centre on Lombard Street, so we're right in the middle of town. We are a family business. We've been established for 110 years now, or just gone, since 1910. We have historically traded in the West Midlands, but in the more recent 20 years, we've moved to Lichfield. That seemed to fit our work style and client base better. And when I say we're a family business, I genuinely mean we still have family members in the business. In fact, I think we're probably almost as many family members as non-family members now. So there's my father, myself, my wife, my sister and her husband. We're all still in the business. My dad's partner as well. So we've still got a good, a core of family members. And historically, there's always been family members in the business. So it started with my great-grandfather. My grandfather then came in, subsequently my father, and now myself being the present generation. And the jury's still out on whether the next generation's ready to step up. But so it's nice that really to have your name above the door. It certainly makes it feel like a family business, and to have you all surrounded by families definitely makes it a much more cohesive and working environment as far as I'm concerned. Not everybody's cup of tea, I have to say, working with your better half, your father, but we get on very well together, I have to say, and it works for us. So, that's who we are.
110 years. 110 years. There's a huge amount of heritage there, though. Yes. You've only been in Lichfield a relatively short period of time, though. So where were you operating from previously?
It was in West Bromwich before my time, but High Street in West Bromwich, or St Michael Street, I should say, in West Bromwich for the majority of those years, probably up until early 2000s, and then the move was made. There always was an office in West Bromwich, but we have had to sort of scale that back, and Lichfield really has become the hub now. But the nature of the work that we're doing doesn't really necessitate a physical base in a particular place anymore. Much like many businesses, because our clients are all over, really, predominantly in the south. A lot of, because of the work we're doing, is coming from London and the southeast. But I have a client that's national, and to be honest, we aren't really having meetings with people in a particular office anymore. And that's obviously changed in the last year. But even before the pandemic, there hasn't really been a need to see people in person. And I'm doing much more work for people remotely, based in different locations to Lichfield than I'm in Lichfield. So I think as a place to be, it's a very pleasant city, and I know that people who work for us, wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And we've just recruited somebody on the strength of us being where we are in Lichfield. She loved being in Lichfield, and she turned down another job that was somewhere else because of it. So we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I think everybody's very happy.
That's a great feather in the cap for Lichfield. I mean, for the listeners, obviously there are a good number of professional services businesses in Lichfield, whether it be accountancies, whether it be HR companies, whether it be legal practices. Just for the people who don't know your particular practice well, give us a top view of the sort of work that you do and the sort of clients that you tend to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really evolved. I mean, from the West Bromwich days, when the firm was very much a sort of a general high street firm, as most businesses have had to do. We've had to specialise. Law and legal services are very, very competitive area of business to be in. So surviving simply on conveyancing and wills and probate may have served you well, 40, 50 years ago. Nowadays, whilst we still provide those kinds of services for private clients, we've established quite a core niche area in something that's may not be well known to people, but its posh name is leasehold enfranchisement, or leasehold law, which has become more widely known recently because of issues regarding leases, particularly on flats. For example, escalating ground rents. You've got the cladding scandal, that kind of thing. That they've become more prominent, but there's quite an area of law that's it's quite esoteric, I suppose, is the word to say. Leasehold law. It's not very well understood even by most practitioners. People can buy a leasehold property, but when you start getting into the realms of how do I extend that lease, or how do we as a collective buy our own building, where you say you've got 20 or 30 leaseholders, it is quite a technical area. And as far as I'm aware, there's no other firm in Lichfield that provide that type of work. And I think you have to go as far as probably, Birmingham. I know some of the big firms in Birmingham will do it, but really you've got to go to London to find the firms that are specialising in leasehold enfranchisement. So we have carved ourselves a niche, and because of that, we do tend to get quite a good supply of referrals from firms that just simply run into a roadblock when they can't deal with it. It's a technical area, so that's making up a large proportion. But otherwise, we are doing the residential conveyancing, the private client work, and myself, I do mostly commercial property transactions. So businesses looking to move, sign up to new commercial leases, refinance commercial property is really what something I'm doing. Development as well to some extent. We're sort of acting on various developments of residential housing, industrial to some extent as well. So it's predominantly property really as a business. We have just appointed a litigation consultant, which is a service we haven't provided for quite some time, but we're finding we're getting quite a few inquiries of a litigation nature. And I think we decided that it was always best for us if we could keep that work to in-house rather than have to refer it to somebody. So I'm quite happy to say that we've now got a sort of an extra string to our bow now insofar as having a litigation consultant on board. So I think we're offering our services are expanding actually, and they have been expanding really for the last 6 to 12 months. Strangely,
that's cool. You probably preempted my next question there actually, but obviously one of the bits of advice that businesses are given when it comes to marketing and business development is try and carve out a niche. You've obviously done that very, very successfully. I've obviously never worked in a legal practice or anything like that. We do IT support for other legal practices, but in terms of you guys promoting your business, I presume there is a huge amount of referral work, a huge amount of recommendations, and word of mouth. Do you do anything else aside? You obviously do the job well because you're busy, but is there anything else you guys do?
There is. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of referrals and recommendations, and I think they do. We get more of those because we're a limited number of firms that will do that stuff. So that has traditionally been a good supply of work, but we have been a lot better in the last 12 months with various. We've worked with a few firms that have really expanded our SEO. So our website has been hugely optimized. We're getting a lot more hits on our website because people are just simply finding us. I think people are tending just to go straight to Google these days, aren't they, to find a solicitor? Well, certainly that's what we're experiencing. So we're finding an improvement in that department. We have really pushed the social media and the PR, the online PR. We've blogged a lot more. We're writing articles every month. We're just trying to get content online that people can see, useful, relevant content to what the services that we're providing, and making it accessible to people. And we're finding that is getting our name out a lot more. I was fortunate enough to have an interview on BBC WM a few months ago about the SDLT holiday, which was something I was very happy to take part in, and that got us some recognition, I know, and I think we ended up in the Guardian newspaper at the same time. So we had some very good promotion last year, and I think our name has got out there in what is a very competitive area. I think you do have to keep, but it isn't just good enough just to do it once or twice. I think we've learned that we've just got to be continually pushing out, news articles, blogs, to really keep ourselves, hopefully at the sort of the top of the pile.
Brilliant. I mean, it's something certainly we try and do a lot about. We are putting a huge amount of content out there. What we try and do is focus on more educational pieces as well, which is, it sounds like what you're doing as well. It's that dreaded word selling, isn't it? But, we do need to sell our services, and we do try and sell by education and by trying to add value. And I think people appreciate that. And it's obviously working for you guys as well by the sound of it.
Yeah.
It's an obvious next question, I guess, and you can't avoid it. How have things been for you guys in the last sort of 16, 17 months? There's been a great upheaval, but you've obviously been busy. Just take me through that briefly.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it has been a very, very challenging year. But I think if you break it down into sort of, the phases of the lockdown, I mean, the first one was no doubt the biggest shock and the change to the system, because we haven't experienced anything like it. Well, I certainly haven't in my lifetime, as to what is going on and how we're going to possibly cope with this announcement that we've suddenly, all of a sudden, got to go and work from home, and what does that mean, and how are we going to deal with that? So we had to act very quickly, and I think we did act quickly. There was obviously a lot of consequences of that decision in terms of our IT and how we work, and what are we going to do with our staff, because I think those 3 months were the most difficult, when the work really just seemed to dry up. People were much more conscious about whether or not their job security, whether they were going to be able to go ahead with things. So that was for us the worst time. But the government acted swiftly. We took advantage of the various support schemes, and so from a sort of a financial point of view, we were okay. I think we sort of got through that difficult spell, and I think it was probably from September onwards. I mean, there was no doubt that May, June, and July were the toughest. But we furloughed people, and we just went down to the skeleton crew, really. And we just thought, well, we will get to the other side of this. We just have to get there, and we did. And really, from September onwards, and with particularly the SDLT holiday the government introduced, we just seemed to think the work just took off, and really from September, October onwards, hasn't really showed any signs of slowing down, strangely. So we had pretty much a full complement of staff back by that sort of period last year. And we've all really been busy ever since. So it's
wonderful. How are the staff reacting to obviously working remotely, working in a hybrid situation, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, some have taken it better than others, and I think everyone has their own personal style, and preferences, don't they? There were some people who just said, "I really physically and mentally cannot do this. This is really," I mean, they had to do it because that was the order that we all had. But there were some people who just really, really battled with it. Whether for various reasons, whether it was IT hardware not being up to the job, Wi-Fi, they just really struggled and just couldn't do it. So they came back earlier. But we've got some other people who are much more happy being at home for various reasons, or having that option of being at home. And I think, to be honest, we'll probably continue to do it, whether or not it's full time, but certainly going forwards, they'll want to have more time at home. But pre-pandemic, we were getting requests from people that we were a little bit hesitant to agree to work from home more. So we were going in that direction before March 2020, I think. This has just brought it forward. So, I mean, I'm at home today, as you may tell. I've been at home for 2 days already this week. But I do have to go into the office. I do need to go into the office for various reasons. But I think it's good for us to be there. So we're going to have that. But whether or not we need to have the same space that we've got now is still probably undecided. I think we will probably have a hybrid model going forwards, and we'll consult the staff. I think that's really how we'll manage it. It won't be we'll let them decide really how they think we should go forward after the lockdown ends.
I mean, it's fascinating hearing you say this, because you say a lot of the things that we're saying to businesses at the moment. As you'd expect, as an IT managed services provider, we had to help companies adapt quite quickly for some, not so quickly for others. Last year, the solutions we provide help companies be agile and adapt. And there's a phrase we use over and over again, which is work is no longer a building, work is where you log on. And it's very, very true. And certainly in our sector, in IT world, there's a lot of talk going on about the fact that since the pandemic, it's accelerated IT change. And we're probably sounds a ridiculous number, but between 5 and 7 years ahead from probably where we were a year and a half ago. The world has changed, and for us, it's changed for the better. It's made us very busy, and Well, I mean, talking of challenges then and business challenges, what are the challenges you see going forwards for you as a business then?
Yeah, well, I think it is going to be around those staffing issues as to how do we physically deal with the fact that we no longer have to be in the office. Do we have people? Do we offer people as a sort of as a standard position now that they can work from home? So there's going to be the staffing issues, the IT. I think that no doubt plays a part, because we were just about to invest quite heavily in a new sort of terminal server or a physical server in our building. That's been put on hold now. So do we, as you say, do we just bypass that now and we just go to a sort of a cloud-based solution where we don't need? I don't want to be sort of tethered to a particular physical location anymore. So there was that. We were talking about moving offices. The challenge is now, do we downsize rather than upsize, as we were talking about, and what areas of work do we want to go into? Because we had diversified, but the pandemic has changed people's requirements, I think, to some extent. So I think we've got to future-proof our business so that we are setting it up now to service the right work for the right people in the right place at the and at the right time. And I think we're still working on the best solution for that, because there's quite a lot going on that we don't quite have. We haven't managed to pin down in terms of what is the future of legal services. It's a big part of a bigger question, actually, with AI and automated services coming, seeming to come along. How much, what do we need to do? How do we stay ahead of the pack? And I think we're going to carry on doing something like conveyancing, for example. I can just see that becoming much, much more automated going forward. See, this bottleneck that's come about through the SDLT has really shown that no matter how good you are as a lawyer, you can only cope with a certain volume of work, and there has been such a bottleneck this week, particularly, or this last 2 weeks. So I wonder, are we getting a lot of IT suggestions and proposals about how that can almost really be automated, a lot of it. So we've got to think quite carefully about how that is managed, and how do we see that area of work continuing if we're going to carry on. People are looking more and more and more now to write their own wills, rightly or wrongly, and even to administer their own estates. They're wanting to do it themselves a lot, whereas traditionally a solicitor would have administered the estate. Younger generations are now looking to do it themselves, so we've got that challenge to face as to how is that an area of work that is going to be sustainable. And there's a lot of things going on with the leasehold law. Leasehold may well be abolished, in fact. And so, what does that mean for us as a business if we're leasehold lawyers and the leasehold is no longer a thing? Where does that take us? So there's quite a few unknowns really with legal services at the minute. But
it's fascinating to hear you talk about it, though, because you're obviously trying to make your business agile.
Yeah.
You said a phrase we use over and over again in our business, which is future-proof.
Yeah.
And you're obviously thinking deeply about the business, which is great. I mean, we see it in our industry as well. There's a lot of regulation now. There's a lot of compliance. When you're dealing in IT, you're dealing with companies' livelihoods. You're dealing. If your IT goes wrong, your business goes wrong. We're all reliant on IT these days. I mean, for instance, in your business, there's obviously a lot of compliance. There's obviously a lot of regulation going on. There's a huge focus on things like cyber security, which I presume you're seeing coming into your daily work as well.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I mean, we're overburdened really with regulation, and I know that our regulators recognise that fact and are doing things to try and reduce the administrative burden. But it is overwhelming, and it almost gets to a point, I think, for some firms that they say, well, it's actually too much now, that we can't actually focus on what we're supposed to be doing and what we're good at doing. So, I mean, I think we are pretty, we are compliant. We have to be compliant, and we do everything we need to do. But if it could be made easier, then it certainly would help us focus on the business a bit more. But in terms of data protection and all that kind of thing, we obviously have to have our systems in place, and that really does rely on a company to support us in IT. We don't have an internal IT support. We have to rely heavily on an external company to keep us up to date, downloading all the latest antivirus and firewalls, setting up the passwords. We've got to have quite a robust system of logging in remotely. That's a different question again, isn't it? People logging in remotely from home, on what machine, if it's their own. So there's been a lot of challenges, I think, in that area. I think we've managed with them very well. We have we're very up to date, I think, with our software, which does help us.
Good.
I think one of the areas that we're finding, which is not really data protection, it's more about cyber security, isn't it? Is being a firm of solicitors, we are getting, and particularly more through this pandemic, a lot of they're not really ransomware or malware threats. They're just simply hackers or people posing. I don't know what the right word for them is. People who are posing, trying to hoodwink us into
phishing. Too much phishing,
yeah, phishing, looking for us because we're a busy firm, posing as a senior partner, sending emails to other members of staff, giving them instructions as on what to do with certain funds. We've had that a few times. We've had various Amazon phishing scams. We've just got to be really, really careful that we don't fall foul. And we haven't yet, because we are very, very switched on to all of that. We've got really systems in place to stop anything like that. But they only need to be successful once, don't they? We need to be successful every time.
Yeah, I mean, you've identified one of the big issues in cybersecurity there, without trying to get into the nuts and bolts and the technical side of stuff. It's people. People are the biggest cause of breaches and cybersecurity, and people are busy. They have busy lives. They get a lot of emails, a lot of communications. A lot of these phishing attacks are very, very high tech. The emails look real, and if you get an email from your boss saying, "Can you transfer this money?" most people will just do it without thinking. And what you brought up is the education piece, the training piece. And if any company who is taking cybersecurity seriously, they need to look at their people and make sure that they're trained and up to date. You can have as many systems as you like, as many firewalls, the best software in the world, but if somebody does something daft, you need to have some processes in place to get you out of the line.
You do, absolutely. And I think even with the best training in the world, there's still a tendency for people to forget their training sometimes when they're under huge, huge pressure. Like, for example, this particular Friday, we've got significantly more payments going out for completions on residential transactions than we would on any other. So it's going to require a lot of people involved in it. But I've said to everybody, look, we are not going to rush our way through these transactions. It's important that they get sent out, but we must not let our systems or standards drop because we're under pressure. We've got to do the same check for everything, and that requires a phone call to verify details, doing our bank checks. Everything's got to be done, but we make sure we don't get pushed into it, because that's really what they thrive on, certainly in conveyancing, is that Friday afternoon fraud, isn't it, where you're under huge pressure to get something sent out, and you might overlook something, even and let your training slip slightly. But it is important to keep up with it, sure.
And one of the things people forget about, there's obviously damage to a business if your systems are down for a certain amount of time and lost revenue. But one of the huge disasters that comes with cybercrime or a breach is the reputational damage. And in the professional services and legal business, the reputation that you're wild and free with people's money, that's not going to help.
It would just be disastrous. And it's the kind of thing that does keep me awake at night occasionally, is the thought that we are sending out large sums of money like most firms do regularly, and we because we're doing about 4 checks on the accounts that we're sending it to, I do sleep, because I know that we've done as much as we can physically do, and if we're not happy 100%, then we don't send it. But there is that possibility of a mistake, and I have sadly heard of other firms who have fallen foul of that and sent large sums of money where they shouldn't have done, and it's haunted them ever since. And it's really, nobody's doing it deliberately, but as you say, nobody's really going to listen to that too carefully, are they, when it's your money that's disappeared? So it really is something I think is at the top of the priorities, as far as we're concerned.
And that's a good message to get out. And I was probably going to say this now, because I appreciate time is moving on, and you're a busy guy as well. You've tackled some really interesting points here, obviously, about compliance, about security, about looking after your clients, about looking after your staff as well, and being an agile business. If we're going to wind this up into one sort of couple of minutes, a bit of advice you could give out to local businesses now looking to become more agile and grow within the area and grow their reputation and the brand. Just give us a top line that we can finish on for companies.
Yeah, well, certainly in terms of becoming more agile, I mean, we are so heavily computer technologically dependent that it's absolutely fundamental that you invest properly in having a really decent IT equipment, network and support, because you cannot function. Those are the tools of the trade as far as we're concerned. So if it isn't up to scratch, then you're not going to be able to do your job efficiently. So we aren't. I think that's the most essential thing for us to be agile. If people can't work from home, then they aren't producing fees, they're not making any profit for the firm. So I think getting them set up, and if people feel now that after this pandemic that they're more productive being at home for 2 days and being in the office for 2 days, then let's let them do that. We're trying to deregulate the business really in that sense of giving the power to the staff to tell us how they see themselves working most efficiently and what makes them happy at the end of the day. Because if you've got the happy staff, they will perform. That's what we found. So I think keeping them, meeting their requirements within reason. And I think going back even 2 years, we were far too rigid. It was, oh, you can't go here, you can't work from home, because that's politically that causes us issues. But if we're opening up our whole firm now to people to do really what they want, if that means they want to go for a run or a cycle at 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning, but they're happy then to work another hour or two later, then that's absolutely fine. So I think flexibility and giving staff really the control of how they work is how we become agile, and I think just gives us that ability to be more nimble. So if you all suddenly decide our office in Lichfield is no longer suitable, we can quickly decamp elsewhere, and we're all set up to do it. And I just see that's how we go. And we just don't want to go backwards really to how we were pre-pandemic.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that's some wonderful advice, and I think if we could distill the chat down to even that last couple of minutes, there is something brilliant for any company to look at. Think about your staff, think about your clients, think about the safety and security, but think about their productivity as well. That's what we're talking about. What are the business outcomes you want? You want greater efficiency, you obviously want greater profitability, you want clarity of finance, but as important as that, you want happy staff as well, because happy staff are productive staff. So I think that was a wonderful message to send out here. So I'm going to probably wind things up here now, Hedley, if that's okay. You've been an absolutely brilliant guest. Thank you very, very much. There's some great business advice out there. We'll be sharing this across a variety of different media. We're obviously going to put some contact details on for Hedley's business and a LinkedIn link and all that sort of stuff. Adcocks are obviously they're an agile business. They're looking to the future. They're doing the right things both for their clients and their staff, and it's been a really encouraging call to have. So if you've got anything else to say, Hedley, apart from obviously goodbye, then we'll wind it up there and we'll get the message out.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jonathan. Very much appreciate you taking the time to have me on, and I look forward to seeing the feedback.